I think I have a hard time understanding atheism in general.
Yeah.
Just because, I feel like you believe in something. You know,
Mhm.
I don't know, but
Yeah, atheism is one of those things where I never felt like I could be an atheist.
Mm.
But I do, if you have like a very, like, if your mind kind of is like just very set on like naturalism and the whole idea, which it to a certain extent, like when it comes to like how the world was created, like a long time ago, people had very different spiritual ideas of how the world was created or religious ideas. And over time, we like learned about natural processes. And so the need for God seems to become less and less and less as time goes on. So if you want to keep following that train of logic, you could say that just because we haven't found how life got to this planet, or we haven't found a way that the Big Bang happened, it doesn't mean that a natural explanation won't arise at some point.
true.
So I understand following that thought process.
I guess for me, it's still a faith.
Yeah,
Like you still have faith in that the natural process. There will be an explanation.
exactly.
Like
Exactly.
I have a hard time seeing how you avoid having faith in something.
Yeah, I think that the natural processes have a good track record, but at the same time, like, it's hard for me to, because when the world came into existence from the Big Bang, we had time and space and matter all come in simultaneously at that point, and then that's when the laws of physics actually came into play. So I don't understand how you would explain what happened before that if the laws of physics didn't exist.
100%
You would have
agree.
no actual like scientific method to even study
Yeah,
what happened before then.
yeah. I'm same. I think a lot of the things is like I feel like a lot of anti-religion people. You know, we talked about Richard Dawkins and
Yeah.
Sam, who I love. You know, I think they have a big blind spot, but I love them. Like they're really interesting guys, and they really have a lot to say, especially about like these natural processes, like
Yeah.
you said, and explaining the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
But where was I going with that? What? I lost it.
All good, all good.
There's a blind spot with them in understanding. Oh, that's what it is. In understanding, they're reading these texts to me the wrong way
Mm-hmm.
because they're reading it as though they were written for people who knew what they know
Yeah.
about these natural processes, and it's like, no, I don't think so. And at the same time, I feel the same way about some ultra religious people, where it's like, now that we know these things,
Yeah.
can we try to read these in a way where they were describing non-physical things? You know, maybe they were describing other stuff, you know,
Yeah.
like how we should behave, or like we talked about the prodigal son earlier, right?
Yeah.
That's not saying anything about family structure, really.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
it's saying something about the proper way to live your life
Mm-hmm.
under God, right?
Yeah.
I feel like both the anti-religious people and the ultra-religious people tend to read it as though it's supposed to be taken like literally,
Yeah.
and I can't understand that either. You know, I'm demonstrating my lack of understanding of things here, but I feel like they make the same mistake.
Yeah, no. I think it's with the story of the prodigal son. That's definitely like the cool thing about Christ is he spoke in a lot of parables, which is like these stories that were trying to convey a deeper spiritual message. Like you have the prodigal son that has layers to it. You have someone who was walking with God, decided to leave, and then came back. You have the son who decides to continue his walk with God all the way through. And then you have a father who is consistently, it says he saw his son from a far way off, which makes you think that he was actually actively looking for him to come back. So he was just waiting for him. So you have these three characters, two of them conveying us our human experience, whether we're coming into something and it's new or something, or where we've been walking in this for a while. And then you have God who, whether you were in it for a while or just getting back into it, he just wants you to be there. Yeah.
Yeah. The father's almost a stand-in for God in that story.
Yeah,
It's
he
just
is.
sort of
That's
I want you back, but it's on you.
yeah,
You
most
know,
definitely.
like, I'm here for you. The second you want me.
Yeah.
The second you want me to be. But
Yeah, most def.
yeah, you got to come back.
Yeah.
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 I want to ask a question that you had mentioned that you kind of went away from, because you have faith, but it's not the same faith as your parents.
Yeah.
And so you went away and came back.
Mm-hmm.
Where was that with the whole suicide thing? Like, where were you in terms of faith at that point?
So 2 years ago, I was still wrestling with the whole idea, even though still to this day, I'm like still trying to figure out how involved I think God is with the world, because I love science a lot. I love science a lot, and I don't like to always attribute things to, either like it's God, or people like, oh, it's the devil, that's doing things.
The devil put those dinosaur bones there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It cannot leave enough room for free will. Like if you go too far with it.
Yeah, I mean that's another thing too. I mean with the whole thing of even in Christendom, people argue over like the whole idea of like free will. It's like a predestination, or if you choose God yourself. So I mean that's still something I'm trying to figure out. But I guess the place that I was in was I was starting to leave the idea of deism, just because it was just taking me really down a really dark path. And plus, I was starting to see God popping up more in my life. There was a book that I used to read with my parents. It's a devotional called Experiencing God. And it's by an author named Henry Blackaby. And the whole book, the whole devotional was about paying attention to what God is doing around you. Because a lot of times we're like so focused on life, and we're not even focusing on, I see what God was doing over there. I see. It's like Moses was actually on the cover of it, and Moses didn't even realize that whole time that God was setting him up for something so much bigger. From even like his whole childhood of how his mother sent him down the Nile, and how he was brought into Pharaoh's palace, and how he learned about the Egyptian ways and their diplomatic and government structures, all of these things, how he found out that he was a Hebrew, and how he gained empathy for his people. He ends up killing an Egyptian, running away, ends up being a shepherd, which is interesting because he later became a shepherd of a different flock.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then how he experiences God in a burning bush, and he's like, first of all, I can't do this. I'm not equipped. And God was like, I was equipping you this whole time.
Yeah. Yep.
I was setting you up this whole time to do this. He's like, plus, I'm with you. So there's nothing you have to worry about.
I love that, because one of the things I have a hard time when somebody asks me what I believe, I have a really hard time answering that question, because I don't really feel like I fit into any specific label. I believe in something. I study lots of them because I find all really interesting. But one of the things having faith does for me is I can remind myself in really tough times that it's like I have faith that I'm never given something I can't handle. Everything that happens, I have faith that I have been given the tools to deal with it.
Yeah.
I don't get to decide what those are, or like how it goes, or if it's going to be something I like, but I'll be all right. I'll make it through this in some way.
Yeah.
Not necessarily physically, I'm going to die someday, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
in times of depression or anxiety, or like just feeling overwhelmed with things going on in life, that faith helps me calm myself.
Yeah.
And once I have that, I can be like, okay, let's just do it. Let's just get practical here. How are we going to do this?
Yeah. I mean, most definitely. And I think one of the problems too was growing up in church, if you were feeling a certain type of way, or like depression, it was just like, pray about it and God will deliver you from that. I'm like, no, I think one of the tools that were maybe given to us was therapy. Like that was something that might be like a gift from God. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
That's an interesting perspective too. Yeah. I think most religious people, not most of the ones I know, I'm constantly corrected that I know a small pool of what religious beliefs are, but that secular help is not really helpful, and that they're not really leading you on God's path necessarily. But I think that's a common belief amongst religious people.
Yeah. It's so funny. I use the word secular a lot with my friends who are who did not grow up in church, and they have like no idea what I'm talking
Yeah.
about.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's secular music. They're like, what is secular music?
bad.
Yeah.
It means not of the
Yeah.
Yeah.
of the church,
Yeah,
really.
yeah, yeah.
Like, wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and like worldly,
Yeah.
calling the world,
Yeah,
the truth.
exactly. The world.
Yeah, it's weird how, like, in my perspective, that attitude is so full of pride. You know, this idea that tool isn't right, isn't good enough, or like isn't gonna. It's like, who are you? You're not God. You don't get to decide what a person needs or what tools are going to be useful for somebody. You know what I mean?
Most definitely.
What commandment are they breaking here?
Yeah.
Right. What, they're not killing anybody. You know, it seems to
Yeah.
be all right by the rules, by the very strict rules. We seem to be okay here.
Yeah.
You know?
mean, I think God too. I believe that when it had humans in mind, it wanted us to be able to communicate and be able to help each other out.
I'm with you.
So I think that's, for me, I think that therapy is definitely a gift that we.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I should clarify that in my thought of you're given what you can't. You're never given anything you can't handle. I don't mean that you have to do it alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean that, like, you're gonna be okay. Because when I feel like when you have like anxiety and depression, it's like dark clouds around you everywhere. You can't see, and you're supposed to go somewhere. Like, I'm not supposed to be here, but I don't know where to go because I can't see anything. And just for me, having that moment of like, I'm gonna get through this. There's gonna be a way out. There's gonna be a way for me to deal with this.
Yeah.
It kind of calms you down, and then I don't know, those clouds disperse at least enough to see something you could do, like go to therapy, or I don't know, it could be as simple as exercising, or like eating
most
better,
definitely.
or like,
Yeah.
you know, anything. Just something will come up, and it's like, oh yeah, I could do that.
Yeah, facts.
That would
facts.
help me. That would help me.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely.